We've all just watched qualifying for the 2023 Spanish Grand Prix, in which we've seen many teams, including all of the top four, bring a huge amount of upgrades. But why now? Mercedes have known that their car wasn't up to scratch since Bahrain. Toto Wolff said himself they needed a radical redesign. And similarly, Ferrari have had tyre degradation problems since the start of the season. So why do the teams wait all the way until Spain to make these major upgrades? Well, I've broken it down to three reasons. First and foremost, the fact that the Spanish Grand Prix always sits around the start of the European season. All of the teams are either based in the UK or in Italy, and for the most part, the start of every Formula One season sees the circus of cars travel far and wide to Asia, Australia, and now even the US. It's a logistical nightmare to get everything a Formula One team needs to function halfway across the globe every 2 weeks. Just remember back to last year where Haas almost lost out on Bahrain testing because their parts were stuck in an airport somewhere. Then, if the teams are trying to organise all of that transportation of parts, along with upgrades and swapping parts around too, they're basically asking for something to go wrong. With the Spanish Grand Prix being a lot closer to the team's factories, there's less of a worry when it comes to sending spare parts of these updated cars. Furthermore, in the event of a crash where updated parts can have minimal spares, sometimes even no spares at all, there's still a chance that if the car is crashed on a Friday or a Saturday, they could get the parts from the UK to Spain in an emergency by Sunday. However, location isn't the only factor, as Imola and Monaco were both planned to come just before, and they're in Europe too, and Canada just after Spain kind of ruins the whole European stint thing. So the second reason is the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya is the real-life wind tunnel of Formula One. The teams have got an insane amount of data on this circuit. Each year between seasons, the teams are allotted some winter testing time so that they can check how the car will behave with respect to tyre degradation, aero balance, and other fundamentals that may have changed due to regulation changes. Imagine if there was a regulation change and we all turn up to the first Grand Prix in Bahrain only to see every single car DNF. It's unlikely, but a possibility if the cars run for the first time on track at the first Grand Prix. That would kind of ruin the spectacle of Formula One, which means the teams get to have an outing in their new cars over the winter break, and most teams opt to run their cars in Spain for winter testing. This means that they can collect a lot of pre-season data at the Spanish Grand Prix circuit, so come the Spanish Grand Prix weekend, they're able to check whether their updated parts are perfectly integrated into the car and generating the expected performance in direct comparison to their own car on the same track 4 or 5 months ago. Which actually leads quite nicely into the final reason why teams upgrade in Spain. The research and development process for developing these upgrades is quite long. These cars are some of the most complex machines in motorsport, and therefore they're a combination of thousands of people's work, each of those people producing just one piece of the puzzle that has to perfectly fit together to produce this Formula One car, which means that when you want to change just a few parts, it takes time. There's the initial design using computational fluid dynamics, then the teams produce scale models of their Formula One cars which they run through a wind tunnel, and then finally a combination of simulation and dyno work in attempts to replicate real-world conditions. All of that takes a couple of months for just one research and development cycle to be completed, which could only lead to 1 or 2 improvements being found. If you think pre-season testing was completed in mid-March, so most teams will only now be ready to bring fully developed upgraded parts. These new parts that we're seeing in Barcelona likely started development back in March or even February. So even though Toto Wolff called for this radical redesign at the Bahrain Grand Prix on March 5th, it's taken the team this long to prepare everything required to make that happen. So there you have it. A combination of geography, data, and time means that the Spanish Grand Prix is positioned at the perfect point in the season to allow the teams a chance to change their fate. I'd love to know which upgrades you're most excited to see develop in 2023 down in the comments below. And whilst you're down there, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you next time.